Everybody, thanks for tuning in to Overcoming Average podcast, sponsored by Atlas Technology Solutions. You can find us at atlascarolina.com. We're an Apple certified managed service provider. We really focus on personable and relatable approach to doing IT. We try to do IT different. We want to be fast and efficient while also educating and being relatable with our customers. We focus on things like security and compliance, HIPAA compliance, PCI, things like that, where we can really help your company in a way to bring you up to speed and let you sleep easier at night, knowing that we've taken that burden off of your plate and let you get back to what you do best.
Hello and welcome to Overcoming Average, sponsored by Atlas Carolina. Today we're speaking with Dr. Lexi Laine with Summit Vitality.
Dr. Lexi,
Hey
thanks
there.
for coming on. I'm so excited. So we met at 1 Million Cups Lake Norman, which is awesome. I've been to the one uptown, and I was really excited whenever they opened one here in Davidson. So it's close, and that's the purpose of things like that, I guess, right, is to meet people like yourself. So
Absolutely.
we've talked a couple times, and I kind of told you the idea and what we're doing with the podcast and had you on. So I know I don't really know you that well, and I can't wait to hear some of the stories. So why don't we just start with, kind of your origin story? Where did you come from? How did you get here?
Where did you get your superpowers?
Yeah. So you were born a small child, and
I was born a small child in Sweetwater, Texas.
Texan.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So my whole family's in Texas. I am technically what do we call the black sheep. I moved away. I actually have ancestors that fought in the Battle of Alamo.
No way.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we go like way back. Anyway, most of my bloodline are ranchers in Texas, so I have kind of like that half city girl, half country girl. Anyway, so I wanted to broaden my horizons and get out of Texas and see the world. And so, my first step is my undergrad in Oklahoma. So I'm like, okay, let's see the world.
That's a
Oklahoma.
step,
Yeah. And then, based on how I got into the field I'm in, I got sick, and that's a different story. But that led me into moving to Seattle. And so it's funny, my childhood was Texas, but when you move to a place that's just totally unlike anything you've ever experienced, from weather to culture,
Right,
politically, religiously even, you take yourself out of that and it really makes you grow up fast. So I kind of say I became an adult in the Pacific Northwest. So there's this interesting development that happened in my 20s. That was when I lived in Seattle. And then to bring me to Davidson, North Carolina was the sunshine.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because you have that.
Did you know we got more rain than Seattle last year? So
Yeah. And whenever
but that's
you
okay.
Yeah, right. And if you compare like quantity of rain,
Right.
The Northwest it's a temperate rainforest. It doesn't really, it drizzles. It's like the London drizzle. It's
Right.
not the Carolina downpours,
Right.
Yes.
So. Yeah. Quite different, but yeah, there's definitely sun and probably more heat than sun here. So a lot of people move here for that from the north, from the northwest, from
Right.
Midwest,
Right.
like Ohio.
Yeah.
A lot of Ohio folks come from the gray.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. It was a climate zone. I was looking at a particular north and south, what is that, latitudinal axis climate zone, and in North Carolina.
Is that
was in
really is that how you picked?
That was a driving force. Yes.
Seriously?
Yeah. So you had, the north and south latitudinal, like what type of climate do I want and where in the globe? So I actually had that reference across the entire globe. And then from there, it was a checklist of, risk assessments, and you just basically make a list of what you need.
Cost of living.
Yeah, international
shopping,
airport.
Airport.
What I liked about it was North Carolina or Virginia. I liked that there was the beach, plus you had the Appalachian Mountains, so you got a little bit of both. Whereas Colorado was locked. You just
Right.
it's just mountains.
Right.
So I was really curious about the East Coast. I lived in Texas and Oklahoma, and then went to the Northwest. And I'm like, well, let's go experience something totally different again.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about with your business. What's the origin story of that? How did you get to doing what you're doing, and what do you do?
Yeah. So Summit Vitality. So I'm a naturopathic doctor, and naturopathic, you'll hear those two terms kind of thrown around, banana. So I got into the field because, as I just mentioned before, my freshman, actually it was my first semester at OSU. That's where I went. I got sick, and that sickness, basically, a long story short, is that it was weird. I was one of those people where, you go in for tests and it's all coming back normal, and you're just continuing to get sick, and things, weird rashes and headaches, and just, and there are people out there who will identify with this, where their bodies are just breaking down. And I'm 17. I shouldn't be breaking down, but it was definitely some sort of illness. And then the doctor, we called it the voodoo clinic at school. It's just that college campus wellness clinic or whatever they called them. Anyway, they prescribed me a really, really, really high dosage. And they said this, they're like, you've been sick a long time. We're going to give you a really high dosage of this antibiotic. And it turns out that I ended up having mono, but I was a really small percentage of people that test negative for the mono rapid spot test in office.
Yeah.
And so they really needed to run what we call blood titers or serum titers. And then penicillin family of antibiotics is contraindicated. You do not prescribe penicillin family with someone with mono, because mono attacks the spleen, and that particular antibiotic is really hard on the spleen. Anyway, the point is that put me into Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is a really terrible adverse drug reaction. And yeah, so my mom, she flew me back to Texas, and we found an angel, we think. He did some really crazy, cool things. Energetic medicine, I kind of describe it as quantum physics meets medicine. And he was this old German man, and I don't remember his name. He's not there anymore. That's why I'm like, I think he was an angel. But anyway, that what I got exposed to is what led me into whatever that was. That's what I want to do. So I finished on my undergrad and went to naturopathic medical school at Bastyr, which is in Seattle. And then once I graduated graduated Bastyr, with the field, I come from a long line of business owners. Okay, so I'm kind of like a beta fish. I just want to swim my own bowl. I don't work well with others. That's not strictly true. I do work well with people, but it was just in my innate genetic makeup of, I got to set up my own business. So, first things first, let's come up with a name. Summit Vitality. And so I sat down, and first it was integrative wellness or foundation something or other. And I had some really cool names, but they were all taken. Like, dang it. So I have a date with the thesaurus and the dictionary, and I start writing down adjectives on what I really wanted to achieve. And I got thinking about, all right, well, everyone's health looks different. And you're, a stage 4 cancer patient who's got weeks to live, their health peak is going to be very different than a child who's just starting their life and they're just going in for their wellness visits, right? So everyone's peak is different. And so I got thinking about mountain ranges, and then I got thinking about what I do as a profession. So naturopathic doctors, we see the person as a whole, but it's a very proactive field of medicine. So it requires work. It's requires lifestyle changes that are not always easy. And so it can sometimes feel like climbing a mountain. So there's switchbacks, and sometimes you get better, and then there are bad days. And people with autoimmune diseases, they know exactly what I'm talking about. There's good days and bad days. So it can feel like a mountain. So that's why I chose Summit. And then Vitality, because we measure life by measuring vitals. When a baby is born, the first thing we check is heart rate, respiratory rate, temperature.
Right.
When someone is dying, we're sitting there watching the heart monitor, respiratory rate, right? And so hence the word Summit Vitality. I wanted to have people standing on their healthiest peak. Yeah. So that was, I started my practice in Seattle, and as we mentioned before, I was like, I can't live in the gray anymore. I need the sunshine. That Texas sunny self came out, and so here I am in Davidson, and I just moved the brand Summit Vitality to Davidson, which didn't have anything to do with Summit Coffee.
It's just a convenience, right?
Yeah.
We love Summit Coffee.
Right. I just saw it as a sign. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is where I'm supposed to be.
That's right. It seems more like Asheville, which they did just open in Asheville.
Did they?
Yeah, I saw it the other day.
Yeah.
Great coffee, by the way. But they, it's funny, with the autoimmune stuff, I never really paid much attention to it, but as I've kind of opened my eyes in the past couple of years, I know a lot of people who have dealt with, what was it you told me the other day? It's chronic fatigue syndrome.
Oh, chronic fatigue, yes.
I know a guy who's dealt with that,
Mm-hmm.
and I've known friends and friends' wives and stuff that just they have stuff going on, and they go continually to the doctor. They don't know. They can't put their finger on it, and it feels like the doctors are just kind of throwing random medicines or stuff at it. And I know I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan, and if you read his book 12 Rules for Life, he talks about his daughter Michaela and her experience with autoimmune. I can't even remember what all she was dealing with, but there were lots of issues with her bones and her muscles and all this stuff. And basically, for her, she went on a carnivore diet. She just eats meat and salt and
Sounds
water. Good. And then Jordan Peterson went on it as well, and he lost a ton of weight, and all of the autoimmune stuff kind of cleared up. And I think, of course, you know more than I do on that, but the approach is, I don't know what is going into my body that's causing these problems, so I'll just eliminate everything except for this one thing. Mm-hmm. And I can survive on this one thing. That was kind of, at least for them, the cure, as it were. And it seems to have totally turned them around according to the book and some of their stuff. But I've known a lot of people, and I don't know what all falls into that category. So what's an autoimmune disease?
Yeah, autoimmune basically means that the self, your immune system, is no longer recognizing self and attacking self. So what that means is, we're not supposed to be attacking our own thyroid, but yet we do, or our skin, or our pancreas for type 1 diabetes. So that's what autoimmune means, is that the immune system is turning against itself, essentially. And, and how do we get there? How do we get to that point? And it's the, basically the inability, we're becoming less and less tolerant to our environment. People with autoimmune, or maybe not even officially diagnosed with autoimmune, but they'll eventually start saying, I'm more and more sensitive to smells, or more and more sensitive to certain foods. And people will say those kind of buzzwords. So, it's really, really complex. There's a lot of variables playing into that, from our environment. We live in an extremely toxic world, to really poor lifestyle. It's, and it's not anyone's fault per se. It's kind of what is convenient and affordable. I mean, a bag of chips is so inexpensive, right? And if you want to go buy a bag of apples, like organic apples, and you've got a family, it's very tempting and easy to not feed ourselves well. So you have an environment that's extremely toxic. You've got a very cheap, convenient, standard Americanized, highly processed, inflammatory diet. You've got extremely stressed culture that doesn't sleep, that's anxious, and then we're going to continue to pile on all these lovely variables that we're exposed to, or that we're living with or doing, and then you're going to throw in some genetics into that. It's just kind of this perfect storm, right? And so we're seeing autoimmunity more and more and more, and autoimmune conditions that don't even officially have a name, and people are just running around, specialists, trying to figure out what's going on with my body. And sometimes if we can just quiet all that down and kind of say, all right, what's making sense here? And asking a more broader question of, let's get your story and get all those little jigsaw puzzle pieces. What are your variables that are contributing to your unwellness and see if we can fine tune that, and so diets, you talk about this carnivore diet. It's interesting. There's a lot of diets out there. And in terms of, I call them Cinderella shoes. So first of all, here's my soapbox. Diet describes the way that you eat on a daily basis. You feed your dogs a diet. Your birds have a diet. We have a diet. But we have cleanses and fasts. That's how I choose that as well. That are, that we're going to take away foods. That would be almost like a fast or a cleanse, right? And so we're going to choose one of those things, and then that can either become our new lifestyle, or it can become a stepping stone into how you might choose your diet moving forward. Okay, so there's a lot of things out there, and in some cultures, so like in Ayurvedic medicine, they talk about doshas. Dosha is a term that we're going to describe for somebody who, like someone is really, really hot, where somebody else is really, really cold. Those are constitutions. And so in some cultures, like in Ayurvedic medicine, for example, or even in Chinese medicine, we'll actually choose diets based on your constitution. So I'm going to just throw that out there in terms of where one diet might work wonders for one person or a few people. If you try that and it doesn't work for you, it's not that there's something wrong with you. It's just probably that you have a different constitution.
Yeah. And I think, obviously we've known people that have tried fad diets and stuff, and it's like I like the change of language there, where it's like maybe it's a cleanse, like a temporary thing,
right? But
to say you're on a diet is kind of implying I'm going to permanently eat this way, and most people don't.
That's right.
And we've tried
because we're technically all on a diet. Right?
Well, exactly. It's a diet of what?
Bojangles for me.
That's right.
But we've done.
I'm a diet of Chick-fil-A.
Right. At my wife and I's CrossFit gym, we've done Whole30, and it's kind of a 30-day thing. And I mean, there's obvious changes, whether it just be better sleep, weight loss, more alertness during the day, or whatever. And of course there's some struggles in there too. And I know, and I think they do the September Whole30.
That's right.
And they'll send out like the calendar, and there's like the dragon on it. Like these days, you're probably going to be really angry and stuff. And a lot of that, actually, you can kind of see that you're kind of coming off these comas of sugar or whatever you're dealing with. And I know for me, if it's difficult to do, it's hard to stick with, especially in like you mentioned, the busy, sort of stressful culture that we live in. It's like, okay, I need to eat something, and I know during that cleanse, I was at Panera, and the chicken has sugar on it at Panera. And I asked them, and they said, no, it doesn't have it. And then they said, let me check. And of course it does. It's got some glaze or whatever on it. But you're totally right. If you don't stick with it, I've always felt like it needs to be for that person, because we're so different. And I've been actually doing this intermittent fasting thing. Yep. Mm-hmm. And it's the first time in really the history of man, the last 50 to 100 years is the only really generation ever we've had food easily distributed for 3 meals a day, for most of the world. And maybe that's not exactly the way it should be. We need to fight a little bit or work for our food a little bit more. But anyway,
Yeah. And so I'm actually going to be doing come the new year, 2 webinar series where the first talk is I'll be talking about the ketogenic, intermittent fasting, Whole30s on there. What else? Low FODMAP diet, an elimination diet, and basically summarizing those 5 different ways of eating and how to pick which one would be more fitting for you. Because even the intermittent fasting, for some people, it's not a good fit. Right. And, and you have to kind of figure out, okay, well, why wouldn't that be a good fit? And then why would you do that? So like pros and cons to it, right?
Well, my friend, Rick Stewart, he's a big runner, and he talked about a girl he knew in college who was on this fast, and she passed out because she just wasn't getting enough food.
Right.
She's working out too much, not eating enough food.
Right.
It wasn't for her.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And some people that are just so hypoglycemic, which there are people out there that are hypoglycemic, if we're going to then throw in an intermittent fasting to that, or someone who's struggling with eating disorders, or people who, like, if you try intermittent fasting and then you're seeing that your sleep's getting disrupted, it's probably because you are hypoglycemic and you actually do need a little bit of something before bed to keep.
I've heard that too. People wake up hungry, basically, like their body's saying, you need to go get food.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you need to stabilize your blood sugar throughout the night. So in those cases, intermittent fasting may not be a good fit for that person, but it certainly is super beneficial for others, and so that's where you have to kind of listen to your own body without judgment, which is hard, and figure out what's going to work for you, which you kind of just hinted at. Yeah.
So what's the best strategy? Do you feel like it's best for somebody to kind of try something for 30, 60, 90 days and then try something else and just constantly be tweaking, or should they sort of try something for a longer period of time, shorter period of time?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah. So 100% commitment for 30 days. I mean, I like the whole 30 for that reason, because they do give you that 30 days to commit. And so, like, you can't just give it a try for a couple of weeks and, like, dabble. No, you need to be fully committed. So if you're going to do intermittent fasting, you need to fully commit. Give it more than 21 days. So I would say 30 days is a good, you should know by the end of 30 days whether something is working for you or not. Some people will know within the first 2 weeks, because the first week is always really crappy, right?
Right.
With all the detoxing. But yeah, so by 30 days, that's long enough. And if you're not, so I always like to ask the question, better, worse, same. If you're same, then you're missing something. If you're worse, obviously, then that was definitely not a good fit. But if you're better, then that's information. And one of the things that my one bone to pick with Whole30 is getting people out of it properly. Now, I know they kind of talk about it, but by the end of that 30 days, it's like, oh, we're finished. Yes, let's go and, eat whatever we want. But unfortunately, what happens is then you go back to the way that you were. And the whole intention is that that's a reset button. And it's supposed to educate you on, what foods are actually inflammatory.
Right. That was the hardest thing for me, is I was counting down the day. I was like, on day 31, I'm going to eat fill in the blank. I couldn't wait. And that's, you're not supposed to do that. It's supposed to be.
That's right.
Because, and I've heard people say too, you could eat something and maybe you don't see the effect for days.
That's right. So it's best to add one food at a time. And so that's where I would come in and kind of help you through this process. And we can integrate in like food sensitivity panels into that. That's what I do with my patients, where we can then have that information of, okay, these are the things you've been avoiding that we can actually bring back in right away. And these things, why don't we bring these definitely back in one at a time? And then I usually will say, well, what food are you missing the most? Is it the ice cream, or is it the pasta, or whatever it is that people miss? And then you have that dairy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I have actually prescribed people, some men, they really miss their beer. So I'm like, okay, whatever your beer is of choice, I'm actually going to prescribe you a beer for breakfast.
Does insurance pay for that?
What?
Will insurance pay for that?
Right? They'll pay for the consult, right? But no, the thing is when you're trying and trialing a food, because dairy can get challenging. It's like, okay, well, mozzarella versus cheddar versus goat cheese versus, there's all sorts of cheeses out there. You can go pretty crazy when it comes to challenging foods.
Right. Well, and the ingredients in most stuff is not just that was the concept of Whole30 is, that's a piece of broccoli and that's all that's there.
That's right. Yeah. So when you're challenging a food, you actually do need to challenge it in its purest form.
Sure.
So, like if you're going to challenge dairy or egg, for example, you can't just challenge egg in a baked good. You really need to just have the egg. And so you would have it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then the following 3 days, don't eat the food. And you're observing, because that's where you're looking for those delayed reactions.
So this could be really a lifestyle, a permanent evaluation. You're constantly looking at foods.
You know what, though? I would have to say, isn't that life in general?
No, of course. Well, yeah, I guess it's just being aware and conscious of like, I'm gonna, broccoli. I'm gonna test broccoli on my life, and I'm sure. But I have heard people that are allergic to some vegetables and certain things that you would think, oh, well, that's normally looked at as a healthy food.
That's right.
Actually, one of the ladies at 1 Million Cups said the other day, she's highly allergic to almonds. And so
that's right.
she was, eating almonds every day, and they're supposed to be healthy, and almond milk in her coffee. As it turns out, that was the worst thing that she could have been eating. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where the value of the testing comes in, and know that the food sensitivity panels are not perfect, but they actually can really help to fine tune and have you see what food that you eat on a day-to-day basis that actually could be inflammatory to you. And then also with that is, there's argument on, well, if you eat the same food, then you're just going to, test high. And I'm like, well, that's not totally true. I've actually seen people who eat a lot of something and it come back completely normal. But I will say that that's why we encourage a variety so that you change it up every once in a while. But yeah, there are healthier foods that we're thinking, oh, this is healthy, when really, like flaxseed, I've seen come up. I've seen garbanzo beans. I've seen coconut oil and coconut milk and a whole,
Yeah, growing up, my older brother was highly allergic to any beans. Other than green beans. I think you could eat green beans, but any brown beans at all.
It's not a
Right. Oh yeah, sorry. But so any baked beans, navy beans, pinto beans, any of those. And of course my mom was like, you need to eat these beans. You're just being a kid that doesn't want to eat the beans. And he's over there like, oh, but my throat's closing up.
Oh, yeah. That's a problem. Yeah. And so what I'd like to do is differentiate between allergy versus sensitivity.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is later in life, I don't know why he tried it, but later, because I think he enjoyed the taste of the beans, but later in life, he tried it and it didn't bother him. It's almost like, I don't know, I guess.
Like he grew out of it.
He grew out of it. So.
And kids can do that when their immune systems are developing more. But I will say that, so an IgE, E as an elephant, that's a true allergy. That's going to be like your skin prick tests. That's your anaphylaxis, your throat closing up, your swelling, you break out in hives, itchy mouth. That's a true allergy. Whereas people might say, well, I'm dairy sensitive or gluten sensitive or almond sensitive. Sensitivities are not as severe. They do cause low underlying inflammation. And that usually is what causes a lot of the problems and inability to lose weight and headaches and joint pain. And so like things like Whole30, for example, you're pulling out foods that no, you're not truly allergic to, but you're probably sensitive to, hence why you're feeling better when you pull those things out. And then when you start bringing them back in, then you get inflamed again. So you have to kind of figure out, okay, well, which one is inflaming me? And then the last thing that I'll say with that is I also have what I call a bucket analogy. And I think I did this in 1 Million Cups where, you're filling up the bucket or this cup. And if you can imagine the fluid line of the cup, what's going into it is your food sensitivities and the toxins and whatever. And so that fluid line goes up and up and up and up and up and then overflowing. And when it's overflowing, you're totally inflamed. You're probably autoimmune. You're not a happy camper. But as you're eliminating those foods or toxins, that fluid line will come down so that you can eat the food, just not every day all the time. It's just one of those, maybe it's a rotation diet where you have it once a week or, just every once in a while as opposed to moderation as opposed to I can never have this again. I try to get that out of people's minds. But initially, when you're trying to get them out of that inflamed state, yes, you want to 100% cut the food to let that fluid line come down. That makes sense?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And all the while you're doing things to kind of heal and strengthen your gut lining.
Right.
And then you can have and enjoy that food.
Gotcha. So is most of what you do based off of diet or what other aspects?
Yeah.
So approach?
Food is huge because food is medicine. But so I have this ladder of intervention, and the first rung is about food and sleep and soul food and relationships and stress management, all that stuff. But as we're climbing the ladder, I have homeopathy, which is energetic. It's more of an energetic way of approaching medicine. Then the next rung up is botanical medicine, so like chamomile tea. People might know about ashwagandha or maca, but plants. The next rung up would be your supplementation, so like B vitamins, glutathione, things like that. Next rung up is going to be things like glandulars. A really popular glandular would be for people with hypothyroid. They have what's called NP thyroid or WP thyroid. Those are glandulars. Bioidentical hormones are kind of in that category too. That's about as high as I'll go in North Carolina. But I'm trained in the next rung up, which is B vitamin injections, IV therapy, prolotherapy. I do have prescribing rights. And then we are trained to do minor surgery as well, but I don't cross the skin in North Carolina. So,
Gotcha.
so I stop about at the glandular level and bioidentical hormone level. And, but yeah, it's a pretty eclectic approach. It depends on who I'm sitting across from the table from. So the nutrition is by far the most important, as well as the lifestyle modifications, but people need additional support, and so choosing supplementation intentionally, not just, oh, you're going to take a bunch of stuff. We're really trying to either correct a deficiency or strengthen an organ system. We're actually really working to manipulate the immune system or like the lungs, trying to repair and restore function. And so that's where the supplementation comes into play. So it's a pretty dynamic approach. And then labs, I'll run we'll call it outside of standard of care labs. We do go a lot deeper. Sometimes that frustrates the primary care docs. But most of the time they're pretty willing to run some of the things that we ask for, but we're just digging a lot deeper because, to be honest with you, the preventative labs are missing things. They're missing stuff. It's why you're fatigued, but your labs are all normal. Like that's a really, really common complaint. And your body is not feeling right, but you're healthy. So it's not good enough.
Right.
So we'll dig a lot deeper.
So tell me about, obviously, as an entrepreneur, what's your sort of approach to growing your business?
Mm-hmm.
And,
podcasts with Chad.
Yeah, there you go. So how did you, what were you doing before? Did you ever have to take a leap to start doing this, or did you kind of do it as a side gig? Or how did you start the business?
How did I start the business? I just found an office and put my shingle up. Okay, so I used to do massage. I did massage through school, and I would do massage parties. So I would go to people's homes, and they would line up people throughout the day, and I would just be there, and they would eat, drink, and be merry, and I would be in the back room doing massages. And so that was my business before. So I had a cushion, we'll say, and I'm queen of overhead low. So because of that, I'm going to say proudly that since opening up any business, I've always been in the green. And
Awesome.
And really because, if I went to people's homes, I just have to pay for gas and the table and, my lotions. That was it. So I always had just an office versus a beautiful medical building. It didn't need that. It just needed four walls, my brain that was inviting, having a cup of tea with someone. And that's really still my setup because I really just don't need a lot more than that.
No, and I've never really talked to you about that aspect of me, but I'm a huge proponent of living debt free, running a business debt free. So actually, Britt on our last podcast, he's a buddy of mine who got into the Dave Ramsey program. So I'm the same way. If there are things that would be nice, but you don't need them to do what you need to do. So I love that. I love that approach. I think that's a very smart approach, and it's our culture needs that more because a lot of people just want to look like they're successful and they're actually kind of suffering in the back end because they don't have enough to pay the bills. But that's awesome. So you got a building, a brick and mortar.
Brick and mortar. I have a brick and mortar. Yep. So I have an office at the business center at South Main Square in Davidson, and then I've got the online portion. So I do telemedicine. I do FaceTime and Skype for patients in different states. I actually have patients in different countries. And then come 2020, which you just heard me mention earlier, I'm starting the webinars. And so we're doing a 2-part series just to kind of launch this idea and get that flavor and feel out there. So doing a lot of content online. So through YouTubes and podcasts and
Awesome.
Blogging and things like that.
Yeah, one of our clients is a doctor, pediatric doctor, and I was talking to her the other day about the rise, or hopefully the rise of just, I need to pop in and see the doctor, but unfortunately you wait for an hour. That's and right. You fill out a lot of paperwork. I love the idea of, as long as it's safe and secure, just a quick video chat, 10 minutes. It's faster, more efficient for the doctor, faster, more efficient for the patient. Everybody's happier. I would like to see more of that, and hopefully we'll get there, because obviously you know, we're technology guys, and we really look at, I'm always looking at how can technology and medicine sort of coincide with education, with monitoring, with anything. Can it be better? Because
it's there. I mean, medicine and technology is definitely. I mean, it is here. You know, the telemedicine piece is definitely alive and kicking. And I think telemedicine is a codable bill now on insurance. By the way, I do not take insurance in North Carolina, so that's something maybe some listeners might be curious about. But I can take HSA and Flex and vending cards. I just need to put that out there.
Okay,
but the telemedicine, you know, docs, you can actually even do like email consults now with them with quick questions. And now in my little business, I have to work through that, because the emails is through, like, if you're going to go through like a big system, there's almost like a triage nurse that triages certain emails. And so that's something I need to kind of fine tune on my end. But the technology side is definitely caught up. You know, like some cardiologists will even like have you do a heart monitor that they're monitoring your heart and it's going into their system. You know, so there is stuff out there for sure.
I know we did a podcast the other day about the Apple Health integration. And I actually, I was talking to my doctor probably a year or two ago, and we were talking about some of the statistics on my heart. So I just pulled out my phone and I showed him, you know, this is what my heart's doing during a workout. This is resting heart rate. And he goes, oh yeah, you know, and it was awesome. Cause it was, I don't know how accurate it is, but it's better than nothing. It's better than an assumption.
That's right.
So you've got your practice going. Do you have YouTube? Do you have, you have got a YouTube channel? What are some of the best places to find you and your business?
Yeah. So if you're on Facebook, we have a Summit Vitality page. The website's got a lot of great blogs. So if you just went to Summit Vitality, if you Google search that, YouTube, I'm there, and I'm there on Instagram too. So I try to keep the content a little bit different on each platform. But YouTube is a really great spot. You know, if you wanted to just actually see me and hear my voice. I
think it's important for people. And that's part of what, we wanted to do the podcast is to understand, who am I working with? Because whether it's IT or a doctor or a lawyer or the person making your coffee, it's nice to know who they are a little bit.
That's right. Yep.
We trust people. Another interesting book, it's called Talking to Strangers from Malcolm Gladwell. I just listened to that, and he calls it the default to truth. We just assume people are telling us the truth. But when we're talking to a doctor, it's nice to see their face and see that. So, and speaking of that, you told me on the phone about some of your experience, and I was interested in that. About did some traveling to.
Yes, yeah.
So tell us about that.
Okay, yeah. So I went to Italy and studied the Mediterranean diet. And it's interesting about the Mediterranean diet, because the Mediterranean diet way of being was because it was cheaper for the commoner, we'll say. But now it's actually flipped. It's more expensive to eat Mediterranean-esque. So that's being lost. And then I traveled to Germany and the Czech Republic to study what was called balneology, which is the study of the healing properties of water. And there were these, we call them spa towns. And these spa towns, you would actually go and you go there to heal. And so there's these facilities that are just amazing. And they've got different temperatures of pools. So like there might be a 98-degree pool, a 110-degree pool, a 45-degree pool that you're going to jump into. It's called a cold plunge. And why would you do this? Well, you would do it because there's a manipulation of your, whenever you put your hand into the water, it turns bright red, right? And then eventually it turns blue. but at first it turns bright red. Well, what are we doing? We're actually waking up the circulatory response. We're bringing blood flow to the area. And what is blood carrying? It's carrying nutrients and all the things that you need to heal your tissue, right? And so by submerging your body in different temperatures of water, you're manipulating the circulatory system in such a way.
Wow. Yeah.
That's waking up.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow.
Right?
I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they have different temperatures of saunas and steam rooms as well. And so they're using temperature very intentionally, but they're all like, if you were to Google search spa towns in Europe, they're all over the place. And so a Medi spa in Europe is going to be very different than a med spa in America. It's not about the Botox and, getting your fillers. It's really, people do go to these places to actually heal. And Father Knipe, which is spelled Kneipp, Knipe. It kind of started with him like way back in, I don't know, the 1400s, 1500s. Do not quote me on the date. I am not a historian. Okay, I just had to put that out there. The Father Knipe, he was kind of the foundation to hydrotherapy, and hydros water. And so he would actually have his patients walking in rivers barefoot at just their feet and just things like that, just to connect.
There is something therapeutic just about doing it.
Right? Right? Because what's happening, you're shifting away from this stressed, sympathetic state of being to a very parasympathetic state of being. You're in nature. It's called nature cure. There was actually eclectic providers that believed in nature cure. And that was eating super clean, walking barefoot, getting out in nature, and it's like, well, gosh, if I did that, my blood pressure would go down. You know what I mean? So it's
totally, yeah.
And so, no, that's not very practical in a modern world. However, I'm pretty sure I have prescribed people to go to the beach, go to the Appalachian Mountains, walk in a garden. So you can find ways to integrate that in, but that's what I did. I went to these other countries to kind of see how they applied it. And in these towns, like, people have got actual diseases and they're going to these spas to heal. Really cool.
Yeah, I think there's the untapped territory that we haven't gotten into is really the mind, and just like, what is it about walking in the creek that's just so, it just,
Oh, right.
There's something to that. And I just, one of the things I've always wondered about is psychological disorders and how that, is it food that's affecting that? Because it plagues so many people, and it's also very taboo to talk about, like, gosh, I'm depressed, and nobody wants to hear that. You don't want to, how are you doing? I'm actually really depressed, and I don't exactly know why. I just woke up that way. And I think I'd like to see some progress on that as far as people understanding whether it's diet or stress or whatever, because there is something about even just you talking about walking through the creek. It just brought back memories of me as a kid, like camping with my family, doing that as a kid, and like just positive vibes.
Right. Yeah. Unless you were the family that, like, the camper broke down and there was like the food fight,
right.
But the point, I think your point is in terms of the mental health and just in general, it's not just one thing. It's a multitude of things, and and you can't fix everything. So the small changes and having some compassion for yourself and for others who are struggling. It's hard. It's hard to be there for someone if that someone doesn't want to help themselves, right? That's a challenge. And then the tricky part is well, when you're depressed, you don't want to help yourself. It's just this catch-22, and so how do you support and what do you do? And that's a challenge. And so, trying to empower someone out of that, of, what are you open and willing to do? Do you want to go to, because some people, going back to the whole diets and constitutions, like which one is right for you? Some people feel better at the ocean and staring at the ocean and having their feet in the warm sand. Others, probably like you and myself, we like the river, in the mountains. So wherever you're feeling most connected, that's it. It's a connection, and we're actually animals. So, and I think that animal instinct kind of comes out of just being connected to the woods or the flowers or whatever it is for whoever. And but yeah, breaking it down into really simple easy things that people can change. And like for me, I love the garden. There's the Davidson garden, like just walking distance from my office. And so it's nice to just get out of my four walls and go there. So I've taken a patient there before, and if that's what they need, right? So it's, mental health is a tough one, and there's a lot of contributing factors.
Yeah.
And, but think of one thing that you want to work on, and that's that small change.
Totally.
That
And again, to bring Jordan Peterson up, he talks about just clean your room as kind of the memes about Jordan Peterson is just, let's not try to conquer the world and solve the world's problems. Let's just clean your room up, your little space. You've got control over that. And so, you start small and start chipping away at the iceberg.
Yeah. So, and that's how it is with all this that we've been talking about, from the food to, whatever it is, just make one small change, and that can, that makes a difference.
Sure thing. So what's next for you? What do you want to see with your company?
I want to see my webinars launch off. That's next. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So
you have a timeline on that?
Well,
first of the year,
so my first series is January. What is that? 2nd and 9th, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so hopefully that will be I'll call it a product ladder. So in terms of having people just get an idea and a flavor for certain diets and nutrition, and then if they want me to hold their hand through that process, that would be the next webinar series, which is a 4-week webinar series. And then after that, if they're still having problems and they want to still work with me, then that would be the next series.
Gotcha.
So
Cool.
that's what I'm, in the process of unfolding.
Awesome.
Come 2020, which is what, like 4 weeks away?
Yeah, we're close. It's weird
3
to
weeks.
even think it's 2020 almost.
That's right.
It's so weird.
Right.
Awesome. So, what do you see as far as I'm always wondering technology wise? What are you seeing with with those webinars? Is it just going to be like a video format, or is it going to be you talking to them, or a little bit of combo? What does it look like?
Right.
The webinar.
So it'll be a little bit of both. So that first one will probably, like, I'm obviously going to do it live because I've never done it before, and but that I will record and then tweak it probably, and then that one will just be kind of ongoing. And then as you move up the product ladder, those next series would be with me.
They would include some
video,
FaceTime,
coaching,
or whatever.
Yeah, right. So it'll be a little bit more individualized and hand holding, and then that's where we'll get into I've been debating on either a closed Facebook group or actually doing you pay like $5 for like a Pandora membership, something like that on the website, to where it's a membership that you get in there, and then you can actually have me for maybe 2 hours a week that I'll just be online, and you can ask me questions. It's like online time with Dr. Lexi. So that's kind of what I'm.
That's cool.
Yeah. So the higher you go up, the more you'll have me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and that's one of the things I love, and I wanted to start doing podcast episodes and stuff. Is I love technology, but it definitely puts up a wall where you can sort of hide, and it's hard to interact with people. But at the same time, there's this amazing power where you can tweet at someone famous, and sometimes they'll respond to you. You have this crazy touch where you can reach out and touch those people. And so for regular people like us with business, we've seen in IT, I still like to go out to my customers and see them face to face, have the conversations. I don't need to, though. There's times where it might be more disruptive to do that. It's just, hey, I've got a question. We fix it and it's over with. I think that's across the board for medicine or for whatever. But it's nice to see that there's a capability with technology and with your business to have a little bit more intimate of a conversation, or, oh, she's online, I'm going to talk to her. You don't have to sit across the table and have coffee. You can, great. But at least it's starting to feel a little more like that. Like,
right.
I look forward to, I know the first time we did a video chat with my grandparents, it was like sort of weird. And now we do it a lot.
Right.
And it's really changed a lot of that.
And for like small children, that's just totally normal.
Oh yeah. It's so normal.
normal.
I thought about Esther, my 2-year-old is, she'll never know a life without, video conferencing Opa in New York.
Right.
And it's great. I mean, they can see his face and talk to him and stuff. So, and I've said before today with the doctors and stuff, I think it just makes sense. It just is more efficient. You can get what you need, they get what they need, and hopefully with insurance and all that stuff, they'll get that ironed out to where it's just
right.
it's part of the deal. You
right.
know, I think I'd like to see that happen more.
Yeah, and I'll just have to put this one plug in the limitations is that not everything can be treated virtually. And so it's really important that the clinician, myself, there are times where I actually say you do need to be seen. You need to be seen. And I won't get into the nitty-gritties in terms of what that looks like, but not everything can be treated virtually.
Of course,
and so that is one thing. And then second is that the power of touch, feeling touch. Sometimes you just like to place a hand on someone's shoulder, that's actually can be really, really healing. So those are the kind of the things that are the downfalls to the technology. But overall, it's very wonderful. But I just needed to kind of throw that out there.
No, totally. And I don't think, even though I love technology, there's nothing that can replace the coffee shop conversation.
Right. In person.
Face to face, in person, somebody you care about, When we've known people that have lost loved ones, like, they want to hug.
That's right.
They want to hear their voice and they want to see them. And that's part of it. So that'll never go away. I totally agree with that. Technology, and I'm always trying to balance. I think even with the business, like, it's technology, but I always try to help my customers find like how to make technology help them, but not get in their way. Because some people, it just gets in the way. It's like, I would be able to get this thing done, but I can't figure out the software to do it. So I just, you get stuck and, they can't figure out this new app or whatever. And so a lot of it's training, but technology, for all the good it has, there's also bads that need to be weeded out. So,
sure.
And we'll get there.
And that's with everything, right?
Yeah, it's with everything. That's right.
So, anyway.
Yeah, because sometimes it's just, you take the good with the bad and try to, technology is just, it's grown so fast. I think whenever I was in high school, it was rare for people to even have a cell phone. And now everybody has a cell phone and everything's digital. And we just kind of have to figure that out. Security and all that stuff, especially with medicine. We deal a lot with that, with health, privacy information and all that stuff. So, we're seeing every day the changes, just like with the diets and stuff, and keeping up to date with where the world's going technology-wise, and just kind of moving when it moves and dealing with it as it comes up. So, Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
this has been awesome.
You.
I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to Overcoming Average. Just thank our guest one more time, Dr. Lexi, and thank our sponsor, Atlas Carolina, for making the show possible. Make sure you go to iTunes and subscribe, like, comment. We are on Twitter, Instagram, all those places. So check out the show there and tune in next time. Thanks, everybody.